Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, August 21st through Sunday, August 27th, 2023. This week is definitely one of those weeks where anything that can happen will happen. We have some major changes that are about to occur. I'm sure most of you know that on some level if you are tuning in. And let's just go through this kind of bullet point checklist that I have here. So, Sun will enter Virgo this week. So, happy birthday, Virgos. This is your time to shine for the next month. For the rest of us, though, I do think this can be a somewhat jarring ingression because Leo, is all celebratory. It's very fun. Don't overthink things, just live in the moment type of vibes. And then that dramatically changes when Sun enters Virgo, which is all about preparation, organizing, learning, being very analytical, being very practical. This can be very good, very functional in many ways, but again, it's a huge transition. I think this is one of the most jarring Sun ingressions, for us to have going from Leo to Virgo. So definitely maybe positive in some ways, but also potentially very jarring. As if that weren't enough, the same day that Sun moves into Virgo, Wednesday the 23rd, we also have Mercury stationing retrograde. And, I feel like that's kind of triggering. Everyone, even outside of astrology, is, at least vaguely aware of Mercury retrograde. It has that reputation of being very dysfunctional, technology not working, exes, people from your past coming back into your life. There is definitely all that potential, but there is a silver lining to all this as well, and I will do my best to illustrate that. In particular, though, with this particular Mercury retrograde, Mercury has been transiting through Virgo, where it is exalted. It's a super potent, super strong place for Mercury to be. That means the information that's coming to us is very heavy at this time. Lots of information, lots of heavy information, meaningful information. The learning, the information in general is hyper, functional. It's intense, it's strong. So to have Mercury turning retrograde with that same energy, I would say is even that much more dysfunctional. Looking at it astrologically, you may wonder, Mercury being exalted and retrograde at the same time, would that make for an easy, Mercury retrograde, or would that make it harder? And I think it would actually make it more challenging, more intense, because Mercury in Virgo, like I said, it's been super strong, it's been very functional, lots of heavy information. To have that same focus, but then turn it backward, turn it inward, it has the potential for being that much more dysfunctional. So we're going to talk more about all that. Like I said, there is a silver lining. This could be a time for really great stuff when it comes to integration, understanding the past, going back, to events that may have transpired over the last few weeks, or maybe even much farther back. This would be really great for kind of slowing down and gaining insight on all of that, integrating mentally or emotionally, maybe getting a deeper or more complex understanding or appreciation of our lives. All of that can happen with Mercury retrograde, but none of that is easy. All of that is a lot easier said than done. So the process itself can be very difficult, but we're going to talk more about that in the day by day forecast. Just to give you some dates on that, though, Mercury will turn retrograde on the 23rd, like I mentioned, and it will stay retrograde until September 15th. So we've got the rest of August and about half of September to have Mercury retrograde. I do think that the beginning of Mercury retrograde is the most dysfunctional part because we're so used to going forward. Usually approaching Mercury retrograde, Mercury is traveling very fast until it slows down, comes to a stop, and then obviously goes backward from our perception. But that whole process is very dysfunctional because we're not used to it. It requires adaptation on our part. I honestly think the last week or two of Mercury retrograde is a little bit smoother because yes, things are transpiring in a way that is unique and different. It's internal, it's spiritual, all of that. It takes some time to get used to, but we do tend to get used to it. Okay, so that in the September part of this retrograde, I do think things will be a little bit more smooth. But at least for this week, it's going to take some time to adjust to. So we'll talk more about all of that. And the last thing too, which this may sound like a smaller thing, but it's definitely not something to overlook. We also have a first quarter moon at 1 degree Sagittarius, the very beginning of Sagittarius, which in itself is kind of an intense place to have anything, a planet, the moon in this case. But also, the first quarter moon is very volatile. I would say the first quarter moon is any first quarter moon is at least as volatile as the full moon. Everyone pays attention to the full moons and sometimes the new moons. Quarter moons are equally disruptive, equally meaningful. And the first quarter moon in particular is all about action and physical change. And, that happens only one day after Sun moving into Virgo and Mercury turning retrograde. So really, you kind of have this whole storm, this perfect storm that's happening kind of midweek that will really change everything. At the very least, it'll be a really interesting couple of days, which, again, everything has a pro and a con. We can take advantage of this, but I do think this is what astrology is all about, because just imagine not knowing all of this is about to happen, thinking that this week is just a normal week. I think that's where this dysfunction really comes from. If we can adapt to these cycles, these things don't have to be dysfunctional. We can, kind of profit or, maximize our benefits from it as best we can. So that's what it's all about. Okay. Okay, but that's pretty much just the rundown for this week. So let's get into the actual day by day forecast here. So starting out Monday, August 21st, this is actually pretty harmonious. You could say this is the calm before the storm. I think I probably overused that phrase. But that's really what it looks like at this point. Sun is still in Leo. It's near the end of Leo at 28 degrees on Monday. And starting out the week, we have Moon transiting through the last part of Libra. So this in itself is a very harmonious dynamic. Sun is in domicile in Leo. It's very strong there, very potent. We still have these kind of summery vibes, themes going along the lines of, pride, family, self-expression, but it's all done in a fun way, creative fun. That's what Leo is about. We are coupling that energy with Moon in Libra, which is very refined. Moon is not technically in domicile there or exalted or anything like that, but I do think it's a very peaceful, very harmonious sign for the moon to be in. Moon represents our emotions and kind of how we experience things on a day-to-day level. And being in Libra, it's supporting us in being kind of thoughtful. We tend to think before we act. We tend to take into account what other people are thinking or feeling. So this is a very diplomatic energy, very harmonious, and coupling Moon in Libra with Sun in Leo. These energies will sextile each other today. Moon makes that exact waxing sextile to the Sun, waxing crescent moon, I guess you could call it. So this shows that these energies are very harmonious. They are kind of very different in a sense, but they are complementary. So what this boils down to for your day-to-day experience would be Monday starts out pretty harmonious. It's a very versatile day, really great for kind of anything. If you want to have fun, if you want to, if you want to lean on the celebratory side of Sun and Leo, be very social, like anything like that would be great for today. If you need to get some work done, that would be good too. We're adding into the mix not only Sun and Leo and Moon in Libra, but also Mars and Mercury are continuing to go through Virgo, so they're adding in some productive, organized energies. Keep in mind, though, although Mercury is not retrograde yet, it is slowing down. It's basically stationary at this point. Mercury is already at 21 degrees Virgo, and that's the exact kind of place that it will turn retrograde in a couple days. So basically what that means is, although Monday is overwhelmingly harmonious, I would say, there is this intensification of the mental energy, the mind, our minds, our errands, our habits, our information that we are delivering and taking in. All of that is gradually intensifying on Monday. So there is that to be aware of, but other than that, it looks like a really harmonious start to the week. Honestly, to me, this looks like, many people just really won't know what's about to hit them, because it looks peaceful. This looks harmonious at this point. Okay, going to Tuesday, August 22nd, Moon will leave Libra and enter Scorpio late on Monday, Eastern Standard Time. So I forgot to mention that, but we do start out Tuesday, August 22nd, with Moon in Scorpio. Already, this is a very different dynamic, of course, because Moon is still within range of that sextile aspect that it made one day prior. But at this point already, Moon in Scorpio, it's not nearly as easy to blend in with Sun and Leo as it was when it was in Libra, if that makes sense. So, Moon in Scorpio, Sun in Leo, these energies fundamentally clash. Also, Moon in Scorpio is in its fall position, so that would indicate that we are feeling emotionally restless, feeling a little insecure, feeling out of place, out of our bodies. Whenever you have planets or like the moon in this case in its fall position, it indicates we're kind of feeling like homeless or exiled. We feel estranged. um, you know, there's kind of just this uneasiness. And yes, that can be very uncomfortable, but I always say the benefit of that is that, this is a very productive energy. You have to be uncomfortable in order to be motivated to make change. So Moon and Scorpio can be very motivating for that. This is also a highly perceptive and intuitive energy as well. So it's almost like we can kind of sense that there's a storm brewing, and so our senses are heightened. We are becoming more aware. This is a super great energy for that. Like I said, just becoming very aware. There's a lot of not only really high intuitive ability that comes from Scorpio placements, like Moon and Scorpio, but also analytical as well. So yeah, again, we're becoming kind of hyper aware. Again, it's like calm before the storm energies. We can sense something's approaching. There's changes happening. Mercury is continuing to slow down. It's basically not moving at this point. So that energy is intensified as well. Like I said, that's continuing to intensify. Um, and then we do have two aspects to kind of briefly mention. Neither one is, super dominating. It's not going to change your life unless you have planets lining up at these points. But they are worth mentioning. So the first one would be Mars opposing Neptune. That's a pretty funky one. Mars will reach 27 degrees Virgo, where it will oppose Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces. Like I said, this is a really weird one because these energies, they're opposing, they're opposite. Even just the planets themselves are kind of, very different in nature. Mars in Virgo is wanting us to be productive, be realistic. Let's focus on small tasks and get a lot of work done. But then now that's making this direct connection with Neptune toward the end of Pisces, which is all about, forget all that. Let's be kind of hippies and just go with the flow. Let's tune into, our deeper subconscious and things. These are both, valid approaches, but they are not necessarily, they may be complementary, but they're not easy to combine. They are at odds with one another. What tends to happen with Mars Neptune aspects like this is, Mars makes us kind of agitated and ready for war, ready for a fight, but then Neptune confuses us, and it confuses, what are we fighting for? What are we fighting against? How are we fighting? All of these basic questions you don't really have the answer to with Neptune aspects like this. So on the one hand, this aspect can make us agitated, but the things we're agitated about may be kind of ethereal in nature. What actually are you fighting for? What are you ambitious about? Why are you ambitious about that? All of this may be very unclear, very confusing. It's like we're fighting some kind of battle, but it's super foggy for this battle. You can't really see what you're fighting against, okay? Other aspect that happens today is Venus squaring Jupiter. This one's weird because remember, Venus is still retrograde. Venus has been retrograde for a while now. This means that we're really rethinking, processing our pleasures in a different way. What do we value? What do we find pleasurable? What are the pleasures in our life? What are our like relationships to all of that? All of these things have been kind of changing, in a kind of subconscious sort of way with Venus retrograde. Now with this square between Venus at 15 degrees Leo and Jupiter at 15 degrees Taurus, these are two benefic energies. These are the planets that are generally the easiest to work with. They bring abundance, but they are now at odds with each other. They are squaring each other. So that would indicate conflict with pleasure, conflict with desire. Another thing is that Jupiter expands whatever it touches, whatever aspects Jupiter kind of blows up. And I think more often than not, this can be a good thing. This is what stimulates this abundance, this adventurousness, things along those lines. But this can go the other way too and be very dysfunctional. So, in other words, changes to our pleasures, rethinking our relationships, rethinking our finances, our abundance in our lives, rethinking all those things. But then now there could be something that kind of blows up in that way. and becomes very dramatic or um, overly like stretched or blown up in some kind of way. So something, I don't know, something dramatic happening with those kind of changes, some kind of sudden change with our love, abundance, pleasure, etc. Something along those lines. So it's almost like Tuesday's becoming kind of increasingly dysfunctional. There's definitely more activity going on, and it definitely looks like we're feeling agitated now. What was very pleasurable on Monday, very easy on Monday, now Tuesday, the energy is just suddenly very restless. We still haven't had these really big changes that are about to happen, but we already have a lot of things kind of stirring the pot, kind of muddying the waters, so to speak. Okay, Wednesday, August 23rd. Moon continues through Scorpio, so remember it's still in fall. We're still feeling kind of emotionally restless, but that may push us to expand our intuition. We're highly perceptive with Moon in Scorpio. But again, it's coming from a place of unease though. So just remember that. This is the big day though. So we have Sun moving into Virgo. Happy birthday, Virgos. You can see here, noon Eastern Standard Time, Sun has already reached 0 degrees Virgo. So that's a huge change. And we have Mercury turning retrograde on the same day. So let's talk about Sun entering Virgo first. I mentioned in the intro that I've really observed this to be one of the most difficult and jarring ingressions of the sun moving into any sign. I think the only one that could rival it is maybe sun going from Sagittarius to Capricorn is kind of similar, or sun going from Pisces to Aries is pretty disruptive as well. But this one in itself, um, yeah, I think it catches a lot of people off guard. Like I said in the intro, Leo is all about, don't worry too much, don't think about anything, just be yourself, express yourself, have fun, live in the moment. To suddenly go from that to, okay, forget all that, we need to prepare, we need to organize, what are you doing to plan for the future? What are you doing to learn about your environment and strategize? It's equally valid, but it's a dramatic change, and like I said, it's not something that we're ready for this like increased responsibility that comes from Virgo transit. So definitely just, I say these things not to freak you out, but to let you know that these things don't have to be jarring. Just know that, yes, unfortunately for many of us, summer is coming to an end in the northern hemisphere, specifically those higher longitudes. Yes, that can be kind of depressing. Summer's coming to an end, but on the other hand, this is all about integration. Virgo is the sixth sign. It's ending the first half of the zodiac. It's ending that first hemisphere. So Virgo has this heavy job of processing everything that's happened so far, and in doing so, integrating that in order to prepare us for what's going to come with fall in the northern hemisphere with Libra, which kickstarts this whole second half of the zodiac. It introduces all these new themes. Okay, so Virgo's kind of caught in the middle. We are all kind of caught in the middle at this time of year. How do we do all this? We have to integrate, process everything. Get ready for new themes about to come in. That can sound really great from like a it can sound really great on paper, but being in the midst of it, having to do all these things can be very difficult. The answer is to just, like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in Virgo season, do as the Virgos do. It's all about preparation, organizing, and a lot of this, like, household chores or working, it's not only useful for being productive and getting ready for the future, etc., etc., but also doing these things can help you to integrate on an emotional level. Doing, basic chores like cooking, cleaning, or gardening is a great example. Reading, writing, all of these things are kind of Virgo hobbies or pastimes, Virgo activities, and they're all things that are not only productive but also they help to kind of relax your mind in a way. It can have the opposite effect where it can stress you out at times, and that's definitely a Virgo trope as well. But on the other hand, these things can be peaceful, they can be calming. And that I think is very valuable when it comes to integrating and building that intuition. However, we're not going to feel super peaceful and calm right now because, like I said, Moon's still in Scorpio. We're feeling uneasy. The change in general kind of riles us up and makes us more agitated in a way, I think. And then of course the big thing that I'm getting to is Mercury does turn retrograde today. keep in mind that this, yes, technically this happens in an instant, but the actual experience is not so immediate. This is a process. So, planets traveling, I always compare them to like trains. So imagine Mercury is a train, it's traveling full speed ahead, and then this whole process, it has to slow down, stop, and then gradually start moving backward. That's like a train. That's really how it actually happens. Okay. I think when we see it on paper, it can look like Mercury is traveling forward and then suddenly it's traveling retrograde, and that's really just not the case at all. Really, all week this week, Mercury is barely moving at all. It's basically stationary, and when planets are stationary, the slower they move, the more intense they are. So, Mercury is the mental energy, the communication, the information, all of that is intensified all week. Specifically today, though, this is the day that it peaks, that intensity peaks. And, yes, Mercury will start gradually turning backward from our perception. So, that in itself is, um, like I said, it is very dysfunctional because now we have to adjust to, things aren't moving forward, things aren't moving in a linear way like we are used to them doing. Only about 13% of us were born with Mercury retrograde. So, for the other like 87% of us, we're not used to this. We weren't born with this energy. It's not usually like this. So having to adapt to this, it does take some time, and it is very jarring, especially because, our work week, our schedules really don't account for planetary cycles like this. So if you've got like a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday job, it's going to be really rough to, try to put out the same amount of productivity that you do every day, on a day like today where really this energy is supporting us more so in like turning within, going backward. I think this would be a great day to have like the next couple days off if you had that, privilege or ability. If we could adapt our schedules to astrological cycles and transits and things like that, this would be a great day to just take some time off. Don't worry about being too productive in a like physical sense. This is more about going within, slowing down, like just chill out, maybe just hang out at home and just kind of process things, or go out somewhere where you can be alone in nature or something like that. And just kind of, take the time to just integrate and process and kind of, look at your life, things like that. That's what this energy is supporting us in doing. It's only dysfunctional because we don't have the luxury of doing that. We have to, work every day or whatever it is that we're doing. Okay. Other things that you'll hear about is, they say not to travel or start new things with Mercury retrograde. I would say, definitely don't, but sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes things just line up where, you may have a big trip planned, or you may be starting a new relationship or a new job. And I would say, don't necessarily avoid that and totally throw off your plans just because of something like this, like Mercury retrograde, but do maybe be more cautious because of this. I have actually started many different, jobs and things when Mercury was retrograde or turning retrograde. And what I've found is that, it didn't turn out totally abysmal or destructive for me to start those projects, but it did take longer for me to start them. Like starting jobs, those particular jobs, like the whole process was very drawn out, took a long time, took all of the Mercury retrograde period or longer, things like that. So just be aware of that and just kind of double check everything, because at this time things are changing, the variables in our lives are changing, the whole like flow of everything, the momentum of everything, the way we do errands and things, the way we coordinate, the way we handle facts and information, all of that is changing. And like I said, because Mercury is in Virgo, this is going to be extra intensified, extra heavy. um, we may still be exposed to really heavy information in a lot of ways, but now the focus is internal, it's subconscious, it's spiritual, it's subtle. It's not linear, it's not forward moving. Okay, so you can still get a lot of work done, it's just more in your mind, in your spirit, emotionally. This is kind of, it's spiritual, it's intuitive, it's hard to pin down with Mercury energies. It's almost kind of like Pisces in a way, which is on the other side of the zodiac, completely opposite. Okay, I actually think Mercury retrograde in Pisces, where it's in fall and detriment, that would be easier than Mercury retrograde here because it's just so intense here. Okay. Honestly, I think that's all that comes to mind right now for Mercury retrograde. Those are the main bullet points. Just keep in mind this is a process. It will gain momentum and start traveling faster backward from our perception over the next few days and couple weeks here. But this is the start of really this huge process of integration for all of us, integrating the past, making more sense of things. Yes, this is uncomfortable, it's not fun, but coming out of this, ideally, you will emerge from Mercury retrograde on September 15th in 3 weeks or so. We will emerge from this much wiser. We will understand things that at this point we just really don't. We may be totally oblivious to major things in our lives that we are about to gain more insight on, which obviously, that can be uncomfortable, but may be necessary, especially when it comes to higher consciousness and things like that. Thursday, August 24th, Moon leaves Scorpio. It enters Sagittarius actually early in the morning Eastern Standard Time. So, of course, that is a huge change. And especially because as soon as Moon enters Sagittarius, it squares the Sun. So, as if we didn't have enough to process and handle, there's all these changes this week and really intense transits, things like that. This just adds another layer to that, basically. It adds more intense changes. This may actually be the craziest day of the week, even though on paper Wednesday looks the craziest because of Sun entering Virgo and Mercury retrograde. That is definitely the most monumental when it comes to those kind of landmarks. um, Even though that all that is true, Thursday, these things have just happened like within 24 hours ago. Okay, so these things have just happened. They're just kind of happening when it comes to the daily events and the moods and things like that. But now Thursday, all of this really gets triggered. I'm picturing like someone setting up all this kindling on Wednesday, and maybe they light it on fire, but then what do they have like in cartoons where there's that like string or whatever that maybe one of you can tell me where you light it on fire and then the thing like fizzles and it goes up to some TNT or something. um Wednesday is when all that is lit, but Thursday is when the flame goes up to that bomb or the haystack or the TNT or whatever, and then it really explodes. Okay, that's how I see it, because Thursday is the first quarter moon. This means that it's been about 1 week since the new moon in Leo. So remember last week I talked about the new moon in Leo. It started something, that initiation was subtle. It was quiet. We didn't fully realize, what is actually beginning. Is something beginning? It's not really tangible. It's kind of, ethereal. 1 week later, today, on August 24th, this is when whatever started a week ago, it rears its head. Whatever was planted as a seedling, a seed, a week ago on the new moon, now it is, ruptured from the ground. It is making itself known. Whatever began a week ago is, it has developed to the point that it's disrupting the status quo today. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, moon 1 degree Sagittarius squaring Sun at 1 degree Virgo. They are not compatible. They are, batting heads. Neither of them are particularly comfortable in the signs that they're in. Both are kind of in kind of weird signs, I think. Sun in Virgo, Moon in Sagittarius. But wherever they're at the beginning of those signs, they are clashing. So, the divine masculine represented by the Sun, the divine feminine represented by the Moon, they are at odds with each other. So this creates this whole dynamic of us being very restless. I think especially if you're not aware of astrology, change itself can be disruptive. We don't like change. So this is a time of change. This is a time of disruption. It disrupts the status quo, like I said. So that can be very uncomfortable. We may be more stressed, more anxious, more restless today. Okay, especially with Moon in Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. It's really provoking us, agitating us. Yes, Moon in Sagittarius is usually cheerful. It's upbeat, but in this case, it's at odds with these other energies. It's at odds with Sun and Virgo. How do you plan and organize and be very practical and cross your T's and dot your I's as we would do with Sun at the beginning of Virgo, but also adventure and have fun and just be gregarious like Moon in Sagittarius? There's no way to peacefully do all of that. Okay, that's where you get this disruption, and that's where you can potentially get the stress, the anxiety. But I always say these things don't have to be stressful or anxious. um, Usually I would say this would be a great time to start something new. is on the first quarter moon. However, you have to also take into account Mercury freshly retrograde. So, okay, how do I put this? I still think it's a time to start something new. However, Mercury retrograde is supporting us on internal activity, mental, getting organized at home, things like that. And then Moon and Sagittarius can be very philosophical. So it gets very strange. Typically, a first quarter moon would be starting something physical in an outward way. However, with this one, I think it's more about doing something in your mind. Maybe this change is physical or external, but it's about something that will help to bolster your emotional satisfaction, your emotional stability, your mental health, your spirituality. So, for example, this would be a great day for setting intentions or for starting a new, like, maybe diet or a new routine with, like rethinking, what would really be healthy for me, especially emotionally or mentally. But like I said, it could be, something with like health or daily habits, spending maybe. I don't know. Let's zoom out though. From a more general perspective, this is going to be a day where shit really hits the fan. Everything is changing. Everything is unpredictable. People are rowdy. People are more active. People will stay up later. I've noticed in particular, children and pets can be just like really loud. They're bouncing off the walls today and tonight because there's just more energy. It's provoking us. It's pushing us to take action to make some kind of change. But how can you do that with Mercury retrograde? It's very dysfunctional. It's a storm. It's a shit storm. So so the only thing I can go back to is roll with the punches. You have to just go with it. The worst thing to do today would be to have like a really strict regimen. I do the same thing every day, and I do this at 10 o'clock, and I do this other thing at 10:15, and everything goes in this very particular way. That's just not going to work today at all. You got to be open. We may still need to make plans. We still need to do things in our lives, but be open to changes. Be open to, I don't know, people acting out of character or weird events that seem unlikely, just kind of happening out of the blue, things like that. You can almost think of it in a way, it's kind of similar to a full moon. Most things that people say, they view full moons as being so crazy, and there's longer wait times, more delays. All of that is applicable at quarter moons as well, and to some extent with Mercury retrograde as well. So expect the unexpected, go with it, and be open to change. Maybe this is a really great time to take advantage of this and facilitate some kind of change in yourself. And honestly, I think for most of us, we're not going to really know what this is about until it's happening. So I don't think this is a great dynamic for, like, if you're watching this and this hasn't happened yet, I don't think this is great for like scheduling, okay, August 24th, I'm going to start something new. I don't think this is what this is about. You got to wait until you're kind of in it to understand it. At least I do. Yes, we can look at these things and kind of expect them or schedule them on some kind of level, but you're not going to really know what's happening or what these changes specifically are in your life until you get to that day. So I would say kind of just wait till August 24th. If anything, make your plans a little bit more loose and flexible. And then on today, on the 24th, my homework assignment for you is think about what kind of changes can you make in your life. You know, Wait till today, wait till the craziness hits, but then kind of think about it if that's not too much to ask. um, because like I said, like in its ideal form, this is a great day for change. Okay, so that's the quarter moon. That's a big deal. You'll definitely experience that. Very tangible for sure. On a less dramatic note, we do have one planetary aspect that would be Mars trining Pluto. Mars at 28 degrees Virgo makes a trine to Pluto at 28 degrees Capricorn. I honestly think that aspects with outer planets are a little bit less in your face. They're more abstract. They're more applying to kind of the world or society. And definitely, comparing this aspect to the first quarter moon, Mercury retrograde, Sun recently in Virgo now, that's what you're really gonna feel. Mars trining Pluto it's. I do think it's worth mentioning, but it's a, what do they call it? It's like it's a footnote. It's on the side. If anything, I would say Mars Mars is in Virgo, so again, it's pushing us and being very productive, especially with those small tasks, doing all these little things. I'm gonna do all the tasks. I'm gonna make a list of relatively easy, simple tasks and like do them all. That's Mars and Virgo. Now that's making this kind of harmonious aspect with Pluto and Capricorn. And Pluto, we're in this process of Pluto, going into Aquarius, going back into Capricorn. Right now, it's at the end of Capricorn. So right now, Pluto's wrapping up this 15-year cycle or 15-year transit of us, you know, eh, really becoming aware of all this corruption in our government, in our economy, things like that. So Mars making this aspect, maybe how do you combine those? I would say maybe there's some kind of harmonious, like new ambitions or new goals. You may be more aware of like long-term goals that you want to make. Keep in mind everything I just talked about. The first quarter moon is happening at the same time, so there's all these changes that could be part of it. Maybe these intense changes that are happening today will kind of rile you up and make you more aware of potential long-term goals that you could implement, long-term changes, long-term ambitions, things along those lines. I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want to spend too much time on that aspect, but that's basically what I would say for that. But like I said, Thursday, probably the most intense day of the week for sure. Okay, going to Friday, Moon continues through Sagittarius, of course. So, Moon is no longer squaring the Sun. We aren't at that peak intensity that we were for Thursday, but still, Moon is it's in Sagittarius. It's still squaring the Sun by sign. So basically, we're still in the midst of that first quarter moon. It's just not at that intense peak that it was one day before. But we're still, in many ways, we're still experiencing it in the sense that we're riled up, we're anxious, we're rowdy. We're making changes. There's lots of random things going on. Different changes, increased activity. All of that is still definitely relevant for today. And keep in mind too, it's only been 2 days since Sun entered Virgo and Mercury turned retrograde. So still a very volatile, very intense day. I don't think Friday would make headlines because on paper it doesn't look as intense, but actually experiencing it, we're still in the throes of these new changes and intense energies, things along those lines. This also gets exacerbated because although the moon is not squaring the sun by sign, it will square Mercury by sign or by aspect. I mean, excuse me. So Moon, although Moon is not squaring Sun by aspect, Moon is now squaring Mercury by aspect, and this is particularly important and relevant because Mercury is retrograde. So, in other words, okay, Mercury turned retrograde earlier this week. Now Moon squares Mercury retrograde. It makes us that much more aware of it. Okay, it brings it out to the forefront even more. So, so just think about everything represented by Mercury retrograde: the delays, the dysfunction, but also the integration, the going back to people from your past popping up into your life. People always talk about exes, but this could also have to do with childhood friends just popping back into your life, or your family, whoever you grew up with. They may just kind of show up in your life, show up in your messages, or call you, or whatever. Things along those lines. And then other than that, it's about integration. This is very intellectual too. Moon is in Sagittarius, which is intellectual. It's about learning. Now Sun, Mars, and Mercury retrograde are all in Virgo, which is all about information and learning. So with Moon squaring Mercury retrograde, this could also bring about a lot of interesting information, especially about the past. We may not realize, like, you may realize something was going on in your life that you weren't aware of. Or you could be learning new information as well that changes your worldviews. This could affect every part of life. This could be more national or international, affecting society. It could also just be very personal. You're learning about a personal part of your life you weren't aware of, viewing things from a different way because of new information, things like that. So as I'm saying this, I'm aware that this probably sounds pretty rough, pretty uncomfortable. I think it's easier to just ignorance is bliss, as they say. But this can be really great for learning something new, becoming more aware. I think it can be kind of heavy. In a perfect world, it would be nice if we kind of like dragged this out a little bit and gave ourselves time to adjust. But that's just not how these things work. We had 2 weeks that were pretty chill before all this. Now, when it rains, it pours. That's what this week is about. So we don't have the luxury of that, gradual. Let me ease into it. Let me dip my toe into the pool. we're kind of getting thrown into a hot tub. That's more what this resembles. Okay. So yeah, that's what this is about. It's not all bad. Could be really great for learning and evolving very rapidly. Okay. Okay, that's what I have for Friday. Saturday, August 26th. Moon will leave Sagittarius and enter Capricorn just before noon Eastern Standard Time. And, I think I briefly mentioned that this is one of the other major, ingressions that I've found to be one of the most disruptive, because it's like one thing after another this week. But the reason being, it's a little bit similar to going from Leo to Virgo. The moon going from Sagittarius to Capricorn is similar. Moon was in Sagittarius, which is all about, just have fun, adventure, let's expand, let's explore. This dramatically changes with Moon entering Capricorn. Now it's, let's be serious, forget all that, forget the adventure, like let's get serious. Where are we at? Where are we going to be at in 10 years? We're familiar with what Capricorn has to do with. And Moon in Capricorn, kind of similar to how Moon was in Scorpio, it's now in detriment in Capricorn. So this is another indication that we're feeling emotionally restless. We're feeling emotionally uneasy. But that's what is so productive about Capricorn energies, specifically Moon in Capricorn. Let's get independent. Let's make some kind of long-term change, things along those lines. So this is kind of it's like a rude awakening, I would say. It's this energy supporting more responsibility. However, the one really harmonious dynamic about this, though, is that as soon as Moon enters Capricorn, it begins trining the Sun. So today we will, in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, we will get that exact trine aspect between the Moon at 3 degrees Capricorn and the Sun at 3 degrees Virgo. So in other words, although Moon in Capricorn is kind of uncomfortable for many of us to experience, increased responsibility, getting serious, all of those things, it's in a great alignment. It blends very naturally with Sun at the beginning of Virgo, because that's, in many ways, that's what Sun and Virgo is about too, getting responsible, planning, organizing. Let's be real, let's be realistic. Virgo and Capricorn are, probably some of the most realistic energies. Like, screw your feelings, screw your dreams. What's the reality? Like, let's get realistic, let's get practical. So that's where the Sun and the Moon are at. That's what the energy is that's being supported. And then keep in mind, you have to take all of this into account at the same time, which is it's complicated. Astrology is complicated. At the same time that we have Moon trining the Sun, Mercury is of course still freshly retrograde. It's going to be retrograde for the next few weeks. So, um, so so on the one hand, it's all about productivity. Let's get productive. Let's get realistic. Let's plan for the future. Let's get organized. But at the same time, Mercury's retrograde. So the way we would usually do that, it's very different right now. Maybe the way we're doing all these things is more. It's more in our minds. It's more spiritual. It's more subconscious. Let's get productive, but on an emotional level. Let's get productive mentally. How do we change things internally, things like that. So yes, these energies are potentially very productive, but not in a typical way, not in a linear external way. It's more about the internal, our mind, our spirit. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, because if you're listening to this, you're already a person that is aware of these things. You're already a person that's interested in emotional stability and self-improvement, things along those lines. So that's what this is all about. That's what Mercury retrograde is all about. For most people, though, most people aren't like that. Most people aren't so open to these kind of emotional, spiritual issues. So that's where a lot of this discomfort comes in. So just keep in mind that a lot of people are going to be freaking out at this point. New things are happening. Things aren't going according to plan. It's disruptive. It's uncomfortable. But again, the silver lining is, go within. This is a time for learning something new, processing things in a different way, processing things from our past, etc. And lastly, Sunday, August 27th, Moon continues through Capricorn. Similar thing to before, it's no longer trining the Sun by aspect, but it's still, in Capricorn, which trines Virgo. So this is still, typically this would be a really harmonious dynamic, but Moon is in detriment and Mercury's retrograde, so there are these kind of things it's a mixed bag. It's typically this would be very stable, very harmonious, but then we're adding on these layers of like discomfort, restlessness, going within, adjusting to dysfunction and new changes, very heavy information potentially coming to us from the past too. Maybe that's what I should have started this whole forecast with. That's what I would mainly see with Mercury retrograde in Virgo. Really heavy stuff potentially coming up from the past. Maybe about your life, maybe about the world, whatever it is. It could be anything. But that's what we have in combination with what would typically be a harmonious dynamic between the sun and the moon. So I know that's kind of contradictory in nature, but I'm just going to put it out there because I think, especially once we get to August 27th, if you're listening on this day or after, I think it will make more sense to you than perhaps if you're listening before. How are all of these things true at the same time? It's how does that even work? You'll see when it happens. It may make more sense then. Other than that, Sunday we do have two kind of major things happening. The biggest one would be Mars entering Libra. So this focus of the ambition, the drive, the all of these Martian things, what we're fighting for, what we're fighting against, what motivates us. That was very practical. It was all about organization and productivity for the last several weeks with Mars in Virgo. Now that dramatically changes. As soon as Mars enters Libra, it is in detriment there. So at the face of it, this can look challenging, this can look dysfunctional. Mars is not acting the way it usually acts. Mars typically supports us in being individualistic. What do I want? How do I go after what I want? With Mars and Libra, it's not that simple. Our drives become irrevocably involved with the drives of other people. We become more aware of, what do other people want? Maybe I want something, but how does that affect other people? And yeah, that can be typically really great to have, increased empathy. That's awesome. But when it comes to Mars being there, it can become very confusing because if you're if your ambitions have more to do with what other people want than what you want, then how does that even work? How are you gonna solve anything? How are you gonna accomplish anything? That's what it looks like at the face of it. Also, the one other dysfunctional part of this is the Mars energy is acting strange. Mars and Libra can make us less motivated, less energetic, less sexual as well. So this in itself, it's kind of a mixed bag in itself because Mars and Libra, if you are a person that is like very calm and very not very aggressive, this can be difficult for you because now you're lacking that Mars energy even more. On the other hand, if you're a person that is kind of aggressive and very outgoing, very energetic, a lack of Mars energy can actually be a blessing because it kind of just chills you out a little bit. So it kind of just depends. Um, I will say though, with Mars and Libra, whenever you have detriment planets, it supports us in things that are unique and against the grain, counterculture. So with Mars and Libra, yes, we may be a bit more subdued. Our motivations may be a bit more conflicted, but at the same time, this could be better for being rebellious, fighting for things that are deeper in nature, fighting for peace, fighting for ideas that are not accepted, ideas that are not mainstream, or fighting for um, minorities, or fighting for people that can't fight for themselves, fighting for things that are against the mainstream, against the norm, against the status quo, etc., etc. That can be boosted with detriment energies, specifically Mars in Libra. But yeah, Mars will continue to transit through Libra for the next foreseeable future. So, so just keep that in mind. If you have Mars in Libra natally, you will actually feel more motivated, more ambitious, more energetic. But for most of us, that will not be the case. This is what appears to be a lack of Mars energy. And to be more accurate, it's not a lack of Mars energy. It's just what would typically be like a really motivating, like what do they call it, like getting in a circle before the big game, like getting riled up. I forget what that's called, but that's typically what Mars would do for us. But now Mars is, it's weirdly chill and just chill out, mellow out. Let's take into account what everyone's thinking. It's just kind of weird coming from Mars. You know what I mean? It's not typically how that goes. So take that for what it's worth. If you want more information on that, as with anything, look to what planets or houses do you have in this area in Libra. because that's where the motivation and the kind of more aggressive energy is going to be for you. If Libra is your 10th house, you're going to feel more motivated, more active at work, maybe more competitive or aggressive as well, etc. Whatever you have there. If your sun is in Libra, you may feel more aggressive, more competitive because Mars is near your energy. Whatever is there, you can apply it that way. But for us as a whole, Mars and Libra kind of subdues us, I would say. Last thing I'm going to talk about for this forecast for Sunday is we do have one aspect that would be Sun opposing Saturn. Looks like this happens early in the day, Eastern Standard Time. Sun at 3 degrees Virgo opposing Saturn at 3 degrees Pisces. On the one hand, I think the way that most of us would experience this is kind of just experiencing an overwhelming like Saturn energy, because Sun, it represents how we are experiencing our day-to-day experience. And with Saturn opposing the Sun, Saturn's energy kind of channels in through the Sun. So what is Saturn's energy? I think at the face of it, we may feel stressed, depressed. It's a very heavy energy. We can also feel kind of bored with Saturn energy. When I was first observing, these planetary aspects and things like that, that's how I experienced it. I would just suddenly feel very bored, but also kind of depressed, very heavy. That's what Saturn energy often feels like for us, especially if we are younger or if we are not, oriented toward that. Saturn challenges us. This can also bring about a lot of dysfunction, but only if you are not being realistic and responsible. If you're a person that, you own yourself, you own your life, you are being mature, you're doing everything you can, to take ownership of yourself, and, you're doing your best, then you can actually be rewarded from Saturn transits and aspects like this. Okay, so as long as you're managing your resources, your time, energy, money, this isn't really something to worry about. Just be realistic, be practical, do whatever you can do. It's only if you're being reckless or unrealistic that an aspect like this will come along and really put you in your place, and that can be jarring, it can be disappointing, etc. Okay. Specifically, Sun is in Virgo, Saturn's in Pisces. This axis has to do with integration, spirituality, like mental health, emotional health, inner health. It's the relationship between your mundane experience and your spiritual or, fantastical experience. So, this aspect may have to do with, resetting your expectations. And again, Mercury's retrograde for all of this. This could be about that. This could be about, things coming up from your past, things changing, that are more related to Mercury retrograde. But this in itself may combine with this aspect to, maybe this is notifying you have to change the way you're allocating your resources. Where are you spending your time or your money? Maybe this is changing your expectations. Maybe it's changing your responsibilities or what's expected from you. Your responsibilities may be growing or subsiding. Usually, though, with Sun opposing Saturn, I would think responsibilities are becoming more apparent or more in our face with that. But that's pretty much what I'll say for that. Keep in mind that happens at the same time as Mars going into Libra as well, so that kind of makes us more chill. But at the same time, specifically on Sunday, there's kind of this heavy energy supporting us and being very responsible and, you know, being serious, things along those lines. And that's the week. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news or of heavy news by any means. In no uncertain terms, this is definitely a very heavy week. Lots of changes, lots of yeah, that's really it. Lots of changes. I think for us who are more adaptable, this will be easier. Sometimes change can be exciting. If you have, like a lot of positions in mutable signs, for instance, this will be your time to shine. You can naturally kind of go with the flow and adapt to these changes. But, on the other hand, if you have a lot of fixed energies or certain cardinal energies, this is going to be really unsettling. It can be very disappointing. Sorry, I dropped my pen. It could be very unsettling when you expect something. We get used to a certain thing in our life, and it can be very disappointing that everything comes to an end. There's always a this isn't hermetics where there's always a things grow, they peak, and then they decline, and then they end. Everything does that. Everything does that in different cycles, but anything, me, you, the air between us, the computer that I'm staring at to make this, everything does that. Everything, so that in itself is kind of simple when you put it that way, but it's difficult for us to deal with. We're mortal, we're human, we are emotional beings. um, these things are easier said than done. It can be really jarring, aggravating, and even traumatic for things to change and end like this. So that's where the change comes in. But if you can like detach from it and just look at it for what it is, that's all it is. It's just change. Yeah, certain things may be ending, but this could make way for new, maybe even better things to come in, and we can use astrology to like insert our, how do I put it, like combine what's going on with astrology with our free will and our intentions in order to create something potentially better than whatever we've had. I don't know. That's all I'm going to preach about for this week. But next week we do have a full moon in Pisces, so stay tuned for that. Also, Uranus turns retrograde as well. We have got kind of a lot of planets retrograde now. Venus. Now we've got Mercury, Pluto, Neptune, Saturn. Now Uranus is going to join the club, turn retrograde as well. So we're going to talk about what all that means next week. But thanks for hanging out with me for this hour now. And yeah, I really hope you have a great week. Make the most of it. Uh, expect the unexpected. Roll with the punches, and I'm sure you will be fine. Okay, but have a great week, and I'll see you next week.